The Screaming Room. It was a cold December evening in the small town of Elmwood, Ohio. The air carried an unusual chill even for this time of year. Families were gathered around their fireplaces, unaware of the events unfolding just outside the city limits. Before we begin, tell me, where are you listening from, and what time is it there? James Carter, a 35-year-old mechanic, lived alone in a century-old farmhouse on the outskirts of town. His wife had passed away 5 years earlier, leaving him to care for their property by himself. The house, though charming, had always given James an uneasy feeling, especially one particular room on the second floor. That night, as James finished repairing his truck in the garage, he noticed something strange. A faint sound, almost like whispering, seemed to be coming from upstairs. He glanced at the clock. 9:17 p.m. Too late for visitors, and definitely too late for his imagination to play tricks on him. Climbing the creaky wooden stairs, James felt the temperature drop noticeably. By the time he reached the second floor, his breath had become visible in the frigid air. The sound grew louder, more distinct now. It wasn't whispering anymore, it was screaming. The source came from the west wing of the house, a part of the building rarely used. Specifically, the Red Room, so named because its walls were painted a deep crimson that seemed to glow faintly in low light. James hesitated outside the closed door. The screams continued, echoing through the hallway. Taking a deep breath, James turned the brass doorknob. The door opened with a slow creak, revealing a scene that would haunt him forever. The room was empty, yet the screaming filled the space with an intensity that defied logic. James's heart pounded as he stepped inside. The wallpaper, faded but still recognizable as Victorian floral patterns, seemed to shift and move in the dim light. Shadows danced across the walls, though no source of movement could be seen. The temperature dropped further, causing James to shiver uncontrollably. He checked his watch. 9:23 p.m. Time seemed to stretch and warp within the confines of the room. The screams changed pitch, becoming more desperate, more human-like. Yet there was no one there, just the empty space and the overwhelming sense of dread. James remembered hearing stories about the previous owners of the house, a family who had lived there in the early 1900s. Rumors spoke of mysterious disappearances and unexplained deaths, but these were just tales, weren't they? Urban legends meant to entertain rather than terrify. As he stood frozen in the center of the room, the screams began to form words. At first, they were indistinct, jumbled sounds, but gradually, they became clearer. "Help me! Get out! They're coming!" Each phrase sent a new wave of fear through James's body. His phone, left charging downstairs, buzzed with a text message from his friend Mark. "Hey, you still up?" the message read. James considered responding, but the phone remained safely downstairs while he was trapped in this nightmare. The buzzing stopped as quickly as it started. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, each second stretching into eternity. 9:28 p.m. The room's atmosphere shifted again, becoming heavier, more oppressive. James's breathing quickened as he realized the screaming had stopped. Complete silence filled the space, more terrifying than the noise had been. Suddenly, the lights flickered. Not the overhead bulb, which had long since burned out, but the very air itself seemed to shimmer and pulse with an otherworldly energy. Shadows detached themselves from the walls, taking on forms that defied description. Shapes that twisted and writhed in ways that shouldn't be possible. James backed toward the door, his movements slow and deliberate. Every fiber of his being screamed at him to run, but his legs refused to cooperate. The temperature continued to plummet, frost forming on the window panes despite the lack of cold air entering the room. At 9:34 p.m., the door slammed shut behind him. The sound reverberated through the house, shaking the very foundations. James spun around, panic rising in his chest. The handle wouldn't budge, no matter how hard he pulled or pushed. The room had sealed itself off from the rest of the world. The shapes in the corners of the room began to move closer. Their forms solidified into something resembling human figures. But not quite. Eyes glowed with an unnatural light, mouths stretched impossibly wide. Whispers filled the air once more, surrounding James on all sides. "Who are you?" James demanded, his voice trembling despite his attempt to sound authoritative. The whispers responded, though no actual words could be discerned. Instead, they formed a cacophony of sound that threatened to overwhelm his senses. Time lost all meaning. Minutes stretched into hours, or perhaps it was only seconds. James couldn't tell anymore. His watch had stopped functioning, the hands frozen at 9:36 p.m. The room seemed to expand and contract, changing size and shape with each passing moment. Then, without warning, everything went silent. The shadows retreated to the corners, the temperature returned to normal, and the door opened easily when James turned the handle. Stepping out into the hallway, he found nothing unusual waiting for him. The rest of the house remained calm and quiet. But the experience had changed James. He couldn't sleep in that house anymore. Within a week, he had sold the property and moved to another state. To this day, the current owners refuse to enter the Red Room. They've boarded it up, sealing it off from the rest of the house. Sometimes, late at night, people walking past the old farmhouse claim to hear screams coming from within, though no one dares to investigate. The legend of the Screaming Room lives on, whispered among the residents of Elmwood. A reminder that some places are best left undisturbed. The story ends where it began, with a cold December evening in Ohio. But now, whenever someone hears an unexpected sound in the night, they think twice before investigating. Because sometimes, the truth is far more terrifying than any urban legend. Pause here for reflection. Let the weight of the tale settle in the listener's mind. The final word lingers in the air, fading slowly into silence. He wasn't on the guest list. It was a chilly October evening in rural Vermont, where the small town of Willow Creek prepared for its annual autumn festival. The leaves had turned into fiery shades of red and orange, carpeting the ground beneath towering maple trees. The air carried the faint scent of wood smoke mingled with pumpkin spice, creating an atmosphere both cozy and mysterious. Rachel Thompson, a local schoolteacher in her early 30s, had volunteered to help organize this year's event. She stood near the entrance of the community center, clutching a clipboard filled with names and details. The golden hour light filtered